What is alchemy? Um, I think in like a very simplified, esoteric nutshell, we can say that alchemy is the ability to transform a undesirable situation into a more desirable situation. Examples of this would be transforming rage and feelings of revenge and anger and loathing into feelings of acceptance and forgiveness and understanding. So that would be a example of transmutation. That's what they mean when they say transmuting lead into gold. Very colloquially, it's really making the best out of a bad situation. And we can immediately see from that metaphor that the hinging concept is actively seeking out the silver lining. So, so using some kind of a distilling process, okay, some kind of technique, some kind of mantra, um, some kind of tool that you use in order to see the best in every situation and try to elicit wisdom from any kind of experience that you have. Psychological alchemy, esoterical alchemy, which is the alchemy of the mind and consciousness, is really trying to distill wisdom out of any experience that you have, whether it be a good experience or whether it be a bad experience. Suffering does seem to be inevitable. We cannot control suffering in this world. We can control ourselves and we can control how we respond, but what we can't control is the world itself. We cannot control what is going to happen to us. We don't know what's going to happen to us. So when suffering does happen and it causes all kinds of distress, we use tools and methods in order to regain a sense of harmony, regain a sense of selfhood, go through some kind of distilling process where we undergo healing. In this distilling process, we can even see this in therapy. Okay, people who go to therapy go through a distilling process of refining their understanding of the situation in order to come to a more holistic, conceptualized understanding of what has happened to them. And then from that metacognitive point of view, from that broader sense of perception, we can make more wise and informed decisions. We can step into better practices instead of constantly falling into habitually bad behavior, bad thought cycles, bad emotional cycles, bad behavioral cycles. So really, esoteric alchemy is a very rudimentary form of psychology, or really it expresses the rudimentary concept of therapy, psychological therapy, taking into account the entire understanding of consciousness as well as its superconscious aspects, its universally conscious aspects, the esoteric aspects. In the East, it is called Tantra, and Tantra, in a nutshell, is the incorporation of techniques that you can do on a daily basis in order to make positive changes in yourself and in your life. That is basically what Tantra is. So whether it be in tantric practices or alchemical practices, there seems to be this best practice where when life is good, appreciate the good, be in the present moment, be in the now, and try to take that moment and elicit out of that moment gratitude and appreciation. And that will refine that moment of happiness into the most pure, blissful gold. And that's the Philosopher's Stone. That is a part of the Philosopher's Stone, is coming into this beautiful conscious union with the reality that you are in at that moment. So when you are experiencing a very happy and positive experience, try to be in the moment as best as you can and think about how grateful you are and how happy you are and how lucky you are to be in this happy moment. And it only exacerbates the feeling of love and happiness within that moment. When you are faced with a negative experience or a negative situation, those kinds of feelings are not there. Instead, we have fear, we have anxiety, we feel like we are out of control, we can even feel helpless. And in those circumstances, we want to use the tool of Well, there's multiple tools that we can use to come out of suffering. See, it's easy to deal with happiness. All you have to be is grateful for it and present with it. But when the experience is very negative, we don't want to be with that experience. We want to find a way to get out of it, and we want to get away from it. So we have to use a different set of tools and methods in order to navigate that terrain of consciousness. One of the common tools is being in the present moment, sitting with that feeling, sitting with that situation, even if it means just bringing your senses to where you are. A second tool would be acceptance and understanding. Understanding that life is the way it is, human psychology is the way it is. Human beings act out of their conditioning more than they do out of their free will. And that might not be an excuse for whatever it is that occurred, but it is a reason. You know, sometimes it's dealing with natural disasters. Sometimes dealing with death and losing a family member. And each aspect of this human suffering, we can implement certain tools and methods to help us overcome and integrate these hard feelings. So it's a mental process of refining our experience and how we respond to certain experiences that we have in the world. Let me say that again. Like the alchemical process is how consciousness itself interacts with its external environment and how it mediates its own experience with that immediate environment. And it's important to believe that you do have a foothold in that mediation process of how you, as a conscious being, interact with the world around you. That's really the first alchemical axiom, is that you have to believe that you can actually influence this in a positive way. That by controlling yourself, by bringing yourself into harmony, with the understanding that the world is a reflected, and this is esoteric wisdom, is a reflected mirror of who you are, bringing yourself into harmony will inevitably start to bring your entire world and your entire life into harmony. And that ties into another important Hermetic principle, as above, so below, the law of correspondence. The inner world, when it changes to become something else, will begin to reflect in the outer world, because essentially these worlds are the same. They are both connected through consciousness. And they are both multi-dimensional reflections of each other. And remember, the philosopher's stone is not the goal. Okay, it isn't the goal. In the classic alchemical stories, everybody's trying to get the philosopher's stone. Okay, but the real goal is to be able to turn lead into gold. That is the goal of alchemy, not the acclamation of the philosopher's stone. The attaining of the philosopher's stone is the method, okay, the method through which a bad situation can be turned into a good situation. How we can elicit wisdom and distill wisdom and experience from suffering. So the goal is happiness, stability, equilibrium, and being able to live in peace and harmony with our environment, while at the same time making positive changes to ourselves and the world around us. We do that through utilizing a tool, utilizing a philosopher's stone. And it's important to know that not all philosopher's stones are the same. In fact, each person is going to have their own philosopher's stone, their own set of techniques and methods that works best for them from a very subjective point of view. You know, the saying, there are as many paths as there are seekers, and it's the same as techniques. It's the same as practices. There are as many different practices as there are seekers as well. So the goal of, if you're an esoteric alchemical practitioner, the goal would be to try and distill and create your tool, your philosopher's stone, that helps you transmute suffering into happiness. And the only way you can do that is through practice, using different tools, crafting different tools. It's an artisan has to learn how to use their tools in order to perfect their craft. So tool use, psychological tool use, in India what they call tantra, in alchemy they call the philosopher's stone or the distilling process, is going to be different for each and individual person. And the only way you can figure out what tools work for you is if you practice using them. And that's also why an eclectic approach to spirituality as a whole is very important. When you stick to one method, you narrow the universe's ability down to manifest what it needs to manifest for you. But if you remain open to methods and you're comfortable incorporating whatever you think will work, then the universe has much more space to work its magic, to do what it needs to do for you in order to get the result that you want to achieve. So a very open-minded mindset is necessary for the work. Not necessary, but it makes the work easier. It gives consciousness more room to do what it needs to do. So here we find that acceptance practices are very helpful. A wise man will get his teachings wherever he can find them. A wise man will get his teachings from wherever he can find them. And a truly wise man can do that because he has the philosopher's stone. He has the clear-mindedness. And I think if there was a universal philosopher's stone, a practice that everybody could incorporate, it would be mindfulness. Being able to pay attention and direct intention towards a particular thing. Concentrating on a desire and manifesting it into reality. Everybody has the ability to do this. This is the universal philosopher's stone. It is the ability to use your own mind to make yourself and your life better.